Hi guys, welcome to Project Glow's Sunday night self-care session, and this topic this evening will be all about how not to lose yourself in relationships. So I'm just going to have a look who's here, who's with me, who's about. Thank you so much for all your questions. I know you've been asking about this topic for a long time. Let me just see who's here. If you can see me and hear me, wave, say hi in the comments so that I know who's here. Anyway, let's get right into this topic because, oh my goodness, it's a topic that is unbelievably close to my heart, because not only because I've coached so many wonderful women through this, but also because I've seen so many relationships just decay as a result of this. And because if you've been through coaching with me with relationships, and also if you've been in a coaching situation with me one-on-one, you will have heard me say before that the decay of a relationship is always 50-50. And people always go, oh my God, that's so shocking. What about if somebody is abusive? Even if there is somebody who's physically or emotionally abusive, it is always the other person who also, because of no fault of themselves, but because their childhood set them up, their attachment set them up to be in a situation with an abusive person. I know I've coached a lot of people through specifically leaving abusive relationships, physically abusive relationships and emotionally abusive relationships. And the first thing that we always go into is how to take ownership that even though you weren't the aggressor, you were in that situation 50-50 because of some setup that happened in your childhood that conditioned you to be in such a situation and not have your alarm bells go off. Now, if we talk about how to not lose yourself in relationships, that's kind of like if we really take the absolute extreme of a physically abusive relationship and then close by emotionally abusive relationships, on the other end of the spectrum towards somewhere in between there is losing yourself in relationships. It's not a case of that you actively put yourself in those positions, but there is something within you, within us, all of us who have been in these situations. There's something within me. I will tell you all of my situations, but I have that in my system because of the way that I was conditioned in my childhood. It can be extreme trauma, and certainly in my case there was divorce, we moved around a lot, but also there can just be conditioning by the environment, the way you see the people that raised you interact. Perhaps you saw it in a relationship that's a little bit removed, like another family member, but somehow you got conditioned into a place where you are entering into situations where you give up on yourself. Now, people very quickly jump to the conclusion that's because you have bad self-esteem. It is part of it, but it's not necessarily the only part of it. Low self-esteem, of course, if you are a place where you find yourself feeling less worth than others, naturally you will constantly put yourself into situations where other people can take advantage of you, where you don't even notice that you're in situations that aren't for the best of your emotional and physical well-being. But that's not the only story, because actually you can have pretty okay self-esteem and still have your conditioning move you into situations where you don't stand up for yourself, where also you just give up yourself quite willingly. So I'm going to share a bit about my life. So I tell you, first of all, the one moment where it really just absolutely dawned on me. One of my best friends, her husband, as a wedding gift, gave her this beautiful album it was hundreds of pages of them on holiday, them doing stuff, them on trips, them fixing their house, them doing activities. And as we were kind of going through all of these pictures and she was giving me the lowdown, the kind of like the running commentary of it, and she went, you know, and I always wanted to visit there, and I always wanted to do this, and isn't it beautiful? I always wanted to marry a man like this, and I always wanted to have children like this, and I always wanted to have a house like that. And it just absolutely dawned on me. It was like this cold shiver running up, like really to the core of who I was in my body. And I realized that not only did I not have a relationship where anybody ever did that for me, but also my life was in absolutely no way filled with anything that I wanted to do. And that's not because I've continuously been with people that haven't loved me, but because through my childhood, through my trauma, through my conditioning, through my attachment, I am the person that always goes along with everyone else. Okay, we can go into huge detail, and this is what I do one-on-one with people when they work with me, is exactly what was your setup. So there's a little bit personality, there's a little bit your conditioning. Most importantly, there is attachment. If you don't know about attachment, please, I'm going to put something in the comments below that will guide you towards reading about attachment. Attachment is all about how you attach to the caregivers that raised you, basically. So if your caregivers were of a certain kind, you got influenced by them. There's actually three. The two major types of attachment are anxiously attached. Generally, people who are anxiously attached, like me, are people who end up over-giving in relationships, how can I put this? It's not that you lose yourself and just go, here's all I am, but it's kind of like, it's something that happens under the surface, just generally, slowly but surely, because you are hardwired into mainly caring and serving, and you're not that good in self-care and self-boundaries and all of that. You end up going along with the other person once, you end up taking on their mannerisms, you end up making sure that they get what they need. And that's exactly where I got, is by the time my marriage ended, I was like, I wasn't living in a place that I wanted to live, certainly not in a house I wanted to live in. And so many of the things, like there was nothing in my life, literally, that I had said I specifically wanted that. Now, it wasn't because I had necessarily bad self-esteem. I just continuously end up wanting to make the other person happy, and I wanted to make sure that they were, in a good place and what was best for the relationship. But nowhere along the way was I ever trained, or was I ever in a place where I could get to that place where I go, you know what, I want to do this, I want to live here, I want to go do that. And it wasn't a matter of that the other person didn't give me that. It didn't ever occur to me. It just didn't occur to me to even say, I want to live here, I want to do this, I want to do XYZ, have XYZ. Just my life did not set me up. And that's partly because in an attachment, I am anxiously attached. So that means that generally I like to keep the peace. Generally I go along with the other person. Generally and you know what? I enjoy it. I totally enjoy it. It's not that I kind of sit there and go, I don't want to do this. I enjoy being with people. I enjoy being in a relationship. I enjoy being out with my friends. And more often than not, I like to do what makes them happy. But there's a very, very, very fine line in between kind of going along with everybody else and completely losing yourself. One of the things I always say to my ladies that I coach through the dating process is go on the first date and come back from that date and tell me all about the date. And so the lady comes back from the date and she goes, well, he went to school here and he really likes Chinese food and he works at this and this place and he really wants to go traveling next year. And his sister's his best friend. And I go, okay, and where along the way did you guys talk about who you are and what you like and where you going? And usually the lady says, well, it just didn't come up in conversation. I'm like, well, would it be possible that on your next date you can say, So what kind of food do you really like? Because I'm really into Chinese food. But this is the stuff we also culturally and in a society, we're not encouraged as women to do this. We're just not programmed to say, I want this, I need this is who I am, this is not okay with me. Because also in culture and society, we're told that, you know, as a woman, you shouldn't be a bitch or a diva. And that as soon as you state your needs, you turn into some undesirable hardball, I don't know what you want to call it. Yeah, nag, perhaps. Perhaps that's the right word. Partly, though, we do have to take ownership of that a little bit as well, because generally we've never been taught how to really recognize who we are and what we want and what we need. We've not been taught how to bring that to the table, and we've never ever been told how to, you know, really communicate that gracefully. Because for most of us, we generally only notice when things are going wrong. It's like, that person hasn't called me. That person hasn't paid me attention. That person isn't appreciating what I do for them. And so we go into that anger mode. But really what's underneath that is much, much more important is, and you've heard me talk about this a lot, the wish in disguise. We need to communicate with the wish in disguise. Rather than going with the surface level emotion of, I'm angry, they didn't do that, I don't want to do, I don't want to, it's more something that things are going wrong. We go into that reactive mode. What you need to do is have the power and the knowledge of yourself, what is actually underneath. Then rather going to your partner and saying, hey, I'm really upset that you didn't do this and that, and you didn't call me, and you didn't connect with me, connect to the wish in disguise underneath and go, you know what, I really missed you. Can we make up for that today? And in future, can you please call me? Because, you know, I miss you and I worry about you. So part of that, we also have to take ownership that a lot of the times we have not been taught. We've never ever been taught how to bring our needs to the table gracefully. If you look back through the videos, it was either 1 week or 2 weeks ago that we did all about how to communicate for deeply connected relationships, because it's never about what you say, it's always about how you communicate and how you say it. So in first line, to remedy this thing about not losing yourself, and by the way, losing yourself doesn't just happen in relationships. I have lost myself completely at work. I have lost myself completely in friendships. I have lost myself completely in my role as a sister and a daughter in my family environment. Mostly we do it at relationships, but another huge place that we just continuously lose ourselves is in motherhood. And often also when we're then in motherhood, it kind of has a knock on to our relationship with our partner in the marriage or the partnership as well, in that we only become the mother and we kind of lose the lover element, and there can be lots and lots of repercussions to that. I'm going to do, I think in about 2 Sundays, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Really how to maintain the lover relationship with your partner and stay in the mother with your children, and really maintain the two things so that your marriage survives having children. It's a huge topic, and I know it's so hard to do. So I'm just going to check on the computer below to see who is here with me, and if you can all hear me, and if you have any questions. Let's have a look who's here. Alrighty. Let's have a look. Here we go. All right. Hi everybody. All right, I'm going to go through all the different topics that I wrote down today. The show notes will be in the comments below once we finish. And do keep asking me questions as I go through this. I know questions arise as we touch on the different points, and don't ever think you've got a silly question. If you're thinking about this question, it's a guarantee that everybody else is thinking about it as well. And please ask me these questions, because I want to make this relevant for you. So the first topic we need to talk about is that relationship between codependent, independent, and interdependent. So codependent, you've heard this word a lot. Codependent is when you are in an enabling situation or basically, in an unfancy way, it's saying when you give up on yourself in the other person. So you kind of like codependent in your wounds, and you enable each other's wounds rather than be awakened and aware. So you, for instance, say that the general one is the husband takes care of the wife financially, she takes care of the husband emotionally, but they both, rather than raising each other up to an ownership level, they both just enabling each other's wounds. Generally, the word codependent is used with people that have addiction issues and their families that enable their addictions. But it's the same thing as you could be love addicted, you can be belonging addicted, you can be addicted to the ideal relationship. So in a way, there is such a thing as being codependent in relationships if you are just kind of like going along enabling each other's wounds. It's a big, big deal. And it's so hard sometimes to spin out of that. So one of the things is that we need to move from a place of codependence where you're basically just, even if you are aware of it, you just go into these patterns where you're consistently just, I talk a lot about this, being in the tower of your strength and judging each other's wounds and just kind of like spinning over and over and over again in these wounded personas that are just hurting each other over and over and almost not being able to snap out of that. So that is kind of a place of codependence. A lot of people then kind of chuck out the baby with the bathwater and they go, I just want to be alone, I never want to be with anybody else. And they go on their mission and they get really angry and jaded and they want to be independent. They never ever want to be in a relationship ever again. But really, the place that we need to be is in a place of interdependence. Because this idea, and this is a very patriarchal idea, that everybody just, needs to completely be on their own mission and you just occasionally have lunch together, which isn't the answer to a relationship either. The answer is interdependence. How to stay in your own stuff and own your own stuff and be actively, but also in an awakened and aware state about the other person. And generally, the only way that you can do that is really know yourself, really know your shadow, really know your wounds, the other person really knowing themselves, really understanding, really knowing their shadows and their wounds, and coming together in their imperfect selves and going, okay, you know what? We both come to this table, the table of love, frightened, wounded, unequipped, and probably not with the right blueprint and generally not with the right communication. But how do we make this work? And at the end of the day, the number one thing that is required for a relationship to work is empathy. The next is that you don't always just leg it when it gets tough, because relationships are about leaning into the really difficult, tough things and not just upping and legging it. But what it really requires is to be able to take the tension, be able to stay in the tension and going, okay, I am imperfect as well. I need to learn here as well. Not just like, well, resentment, judgment, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. It's just judgment, criticism, all kind of that stuff. And please, please do be aware and careful. If you've done a lot of personal development, standing in your partner and while you're going through a process or you're having a discussion where you're disagreeing and going, ooh, I can totally see your patterns and I totally understand why this is your wound, and the other person will just want to fucking punch you, excuse my French. Do not bring your, therapy talk, I don't care how much personal development you have shoved into your system. You do not stand there from a place of judgment and higher moral ground, and just because you have words that you can label the process, go into this condescending place. Please do not do that. I know that's easy. That's an easy thing to do and go, well, this is your wound or this is your shadow. I have one friend that every time we have we have a disagreement, he just goes, oh, well, it's because your mother did this and this to you. And it's just so not on. It is so not on. Okay. But coming back to the main point, this is about learning how to become interdependent. For that to happen, you need to understand your boundaries. The only way that you can really understand your boundaries is by understanding who you are, really sitting down, taking the time and going, okay, this is okay with me, this is not okay with me. After that, you need to back it up with the ability to communicate that gracefully, calmly, even when you are faced with great tension, how to be able to stand strong in your ground and really communicate effectively and gracefully. Nobody taught you that. You need to learn how to do this. This is one of the key things that I teach in my online courses and in all my workshops. How do you communicate? First of all, how do you know what's right and wrong for you when you're not in the heat of the situation, when you've taken a step back? But then also, how do you communicate that? How do you come, not from that reactive place where you want to rip the other person's head off, but that underneath, that soul place of the wish in disguise, and rather saying, well, you didn't text and you didn't call and I'm so mad at you, which is your reactivity, but tapping into that wish in disguise that comes from your heart and says, hey, I'm feeling really distant from you. Can you, and I really missed you, and can we spend time together? But what you need to be able to really, for the foundation for that to be possible to be in place, you need to understand that there is a spectrum of a difference between being careful, where you're constantly being on eggshells around that person, and at the other extreme being careless. Okay, so if you're careless in relationships and you're just about, I want to do this, this is where I want to go, we're doing this, then you're careless. It's all about your values, what you want to do, where you want to go, and generally you will attract somebody who's the opposite of you and then will go along with everything you want to do. This is deadly for your relationship. Here's why. If you're the person that's careless and constantly leads ahead, and you have a person who's codependent, well, eventually you will not be attracted to that person anymore, because they will give up on themselves, and then you kind of like go, oh, I'm not really interested here. But as the person who's careful constantly, careful, and on eggshells around the other person who's careless, the problem that you have, and this is the problem that I had, is you will notice too late when things don't, really hurt you, and you'll go 5 days later, had I only said that, had I only not said yes. You generally, a lot of the time, say yes to things that you don't want to say yes to, but you notice way too late. And you'll be in a position where I was in, where you spent the majority and the bulk of your life going along with everyone else, and then you sat there and you go, I've done nothing that I want to do, and I'm left with nothing because I always molded my life according to everybody else's. Here's what happens is eventually you will start to resent the person who at no point turned back towards you and said, hey, what do you want to do today? What do you need today? But that's also because you trained them. You trained them not to care about your needs because you never laid them out. You were never aware of your needs, and also you never said, hey, this isn't okay with me. Actually, I need this. I would really like to do this today. This is really important to me. You've kind of trained them totally. A lot of the time, people always get into a situation where a partner or a friend or a family member lets them down, or doesn't appreciate them, or doesn't kind of reciprocate their affection. And I go, okay, we just have to kind of take stock of the fact whether you actually trained this person to be like that by you giving up on yourself consistently. Well, you can't really expect the other person to all of a sudden turn around and go, oh, you know what? What do you need and what do you want? It ain't ever going to happen. And that's why a lot of people who are in the position that I was in, who are in the careful category, in the codependent category, is you will have a lot of repressed anxiety and passive aggressive tendencies, because you go around thinking, I constantly give up on myself, I care for everybody, and they never turn around and they never ask me what I want. It's a 50-50. It's also because primarily that is also your job to say, this is who I am, this is what I want, and this is what I need. And that is why careful people pleasers, codependents, I'll put my hand right up there, people who generally lose themselves generally attract very careless people. So the careful lot always attract careless people, because they need to be more like the careless people so that they can be in the middle and be caring. And likewise, a careless person, a narcissist, a bully, will generally always attract somebody who's very codependent and cute and nice and sweet, because they need to be more on that side of the curve. So you always attract into a relationship exactly the person that's come in to bring you awareness to where you need to go. So that is generally a situation if you're constantly attracting emotionally unavailable men, if you're constantly attracting bullies, or people that really don't give a hoot about what your needs are. I guarantee you that the first place you need to look is are you actually paying attention to your needs? Are you voicing them? Have you learned how to voice them gracefully and in a calm way so that the other person can meet you there? Or are you always letting out the crocodile, always ripping the other person's head off? So where are you at, by the way? Do you think that you are still on the eggshell, careful side? Are you on the very... It's not the very extreme end of that is the doormat and the kind of victim mode. But are you still in that place where generally you are careful around people and it's more about other people than your needs? I mean, we can all be honest about that. Or are you more on the careless place where it's all about what you want, where you need to go, what's your needs, and actually other people's needs don't matter so much? Hey, Paula. Hi, all the rest of you also, thank you so much for joining me. This is a big topic and I'm so passionate about it because I spent the majority of my life just basically losing myself in relationships, in work, in just absolutely everything. But of course, the universe always has your back, and so it will cut off relationships. It will cut off situations. So I completely and utterly lost myself in sports. Like I just got absolutely obsessed with it. And bam, I had an injury to bring me back to the middle. Then I kind of got way head over heels into relationships. And bam, those relationships all kind of crumbled before me. Then I got absolutely lost in work. I was going to be the number one person in this job. Ooh, bam, then that kind of cut me down. Every time I overextend myself, thanks, Paula. Paula is saying that's a crocodile noise. Snap, 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 snap. I know. I've done other videos where I've talked a lot about the crocodile, which is the reactive part. That's split-second anger or resentment or fear or things like that. That's your reactive part. Then there's the higher owl, the higher awareness. That's that place where you can see the higher perspective and really come into a place of responding calmly and gracefully rather than just reactively. Okay, so we covered it. The first topic that we covered are you in a codependent state, in an independent state, or an interdependent state? Generally, people start in codependent state. They then kind of get completely jaded with relationships and they flip over into independent. And the idea is then to come back into interdependent, where you are actually intertwined with another person's life, but you remain in your own boundaries. Then also we've got the 3 different states of careful. You're eggshelling around the person. You're giving away your power. Caring is the middle, where you care about the other person and yourself, other and self. And then careless. Careless is the person that just cares about themselves. And careful is generally the doormat, the people pleaser, the eggsheller. Okay. I also said that it doesn't only just have something to do with your self-esteem, because you can have plenty good self-esteem, but it also has something to do on your attachment level. Are you anxiously attached or are you avoidantly attached? So attachment theory is all about how you relate to the main person in your life that has been your caregiver when you were a child, and that's how you were programmed. But this is what you bring into relationships. I'm going to put some attachments in the comments below. So are you anxiously attached or are you avoidantly attached? Anxious is the person that always wants to make everything okay, needs the connection, needs the feedback. Avoidant is like, yeah, see you later, less is better. Okay, so are you codependent, independent, interdependent? Are you anxiously or avoidantly attached? Are you careful, caring, or careless? And generally, in your communication, when something goes wrong, are you reactive, snappy, 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 the crocodile, or have you learned how to go into the higher space, become aware of the wish in disguise, and be able to communicate from that calm, graceful state? These are a couple of the kind of really big pillars and elements that you need to understand about how not to lose yourself in a relationship. And I love the work of a lady called Rory Ray. I'll put her details in the column below, in the comments below as well. You know, she talks a lot about leaning into a relationship. She talks a lot about the difference between the divine masculine and the divine feminine, because actually this place of overgiving and overcaring and wanting to make everything okay for the other person is actually almost masculine in a way, but it is certainly in a mother kind of, it straddles the line, because on some level, she says that it's very masculine. Is everything okay? Do you need everything else? Can I do anything else for you? Are you okay? Are you sure? It's kind of like quite thrusting forwards. It's almost quite masculine, where the divine feminine is more this laid back energy where you can relax and kind of not have to fill conversational dull points. You know, when you're sitting somewhere, are you that person that's always, hey, how you doing? And where did you last go to on holiday? And are you the person that's constantly making the conversation okay? I was noticing that about myself once I went through her course. Is she asked, are you constantly leaning in? And I'm like, I'm not leaning in. And then I realized that actually I constantly do it everywhere. Is everything okay? Can I do anything for you? Also, as soon as I meet someone, get into a situation with them, I suppose that's partly the coach in me, but partly also the other jobs that I had. I'm constantly the driver of the conversation, rather than just kind of go and let somebody else take the stride of the conversation. You know, it's kind of, oh, this is a very interesting point. Are you actually being mainly the masculine energy by constantly driving the conversation, the relationships, and as a result, are the men in your life leaning backwards, leaning out, paying you less attention because there's no space for them? There's no space for them because you're constantly either driving the situation from a masculine perspective or driving the situation from a mother perspective, which both of those things are not necessarily healthy. They're healthy for businesses, they're healthy for children, but they're not healthy for your primary relationships, especially not with the opposite sex. So I'm just going to have a look in the comments below. Let me see what you've written. Okay, Emily, you ask, is there a way to not go back to the codependent state? I think that is a very, very good question. So my perspective on that is I think I'm going to be codependently inclined my whole life. Now, that isn't necessarily a bad thing, because I actually really like that part about myself. So the part that's super caring, super engaged, super connected. Remember when I talked about your biggest strength always being your biggest demon? Every single human being on the planet has that light and shadow within themselves. So for me, definitely, my strength is connection, communication, caring. The shadow side of that is that I have a problem with codependency. I have a problem with overgiving. I have a problem with maintaining my own self-love and self-care. But it is a part of me, and a part of my journey is to shine through the light that I have. And I certainly do that in my relationships, with my friendships, and also it's the key part of what I use as my business. I care deeply and passionately about my clients. I'm totally engaged. People have all of me when they work together with me. I know those of you that worked with me, you know that I have got your back. I'm on your side. But also, as a result, with the shadow, I have to do a lot of work to be very conscious about my self-love, about my self-care, about my boundaries, and about being awake. That's why this has to be a practice. You will have to be aware of it all the time. And certainly you will grow through that awareness. But most importantly, and I always say this over and over again, if you knew better, you would do better. And that's why a lot of the time, just being aware isn't enough. You need new information. You need new learnings. That's why I run my online courses, is your system is running over the same pattern again and again and again, not because you are trapped in some kind of a wound. It's because you don't have the new information to get you over that situation and into a different path. That's why I am highly, highly encouraging everybody that you do need to learn how to love yourself. You need to learn how to self-care. You need to learn that in an environment of other women. You need to learn that in a community of other women, because you need to see them do it as well. And also you need the accountability and the reminder, because that thing that we have as women that we care so much and we love so deeply, it does have a shadow. But everything in your life, it's about balance. So it's like the question is, yes, of course, there is a way not to go codependency, but what will probably happen is you'll find that you will dip into codependency, dip, dip, dip. And the question is how can you constantly get back to balance? And that, I would say, you need to learn how to get back. You need to really know yourself. You need to learn how to notice it and then readjust it. And most importantly, you need to surround yourself with a community of other women that are equally aware and awakened, that you can constantly have communication with them backwards and forwards, and also learn in an environment where you have a coach or a community that's learning or going through that process with you, that keeps you holding, accountable and responsible. Because the truth is you're going to probably dip into that codependency, not as unaware and unawakened as ever before, but you're going to slide and slide and slide. And then it's like, what can we do for you to pull yourself out that? I had a thing 2 days ago where I just all of a sudden my alarm bell went off and I just felt, ooh, I'm totally overstepping the mark here in a friendship. I'm totally overgiving in this situation. The first reaction that I had, of course, my crocodile came out and I went, ugh, I've done it again. So first of all, I was angry at the other person and at myself. But now I know that actually that initial reactive face, my crocodile, is really, really important, because it's the thing that highlights to me that something is out of balance, that I've let myself slide. So then I hold the crocodile and I now know immediately to go into the second level and to go, okay, what is the wish in disguise? Okay, the wish in disguise is that I want the other person to connect with me. I want them to care about me as well. Then I take ownership. Have I actually programmed them not to care about me, not to pay attention to me by me leaning in too far, managing, overgiving, okay, so what do? Lean back. I know there's some kind of a hip-hop song, lean back, pull myself back, concentrate on my own self-love and self-care. But then also at the next stage, go into that situation and say, hey, the situation happened over the last couple of days. I really feel like I'm out of balance with myself. And at the end of the day, I'd really love for you to care about how I'm doing and what I need from you. And I'd like X, Y, Z from you. Not in a reactive, bitchy, nagging, moany way. So these are a couple of things that you need to learn. First of all, you need to notice when you're sliding into that codependence. You need to harness the reaction and don't move ahead from a place of reactivity. And that can be a reactivity that's either anger or a reactivity that is anger inwards and shuts you down. You need to hold that tension and move through it, because that is not the place. You do not want to unleash the crocodile on other people. That's when you then go turn inwards into yourself, self-love, self-care. What am I angry about? Ownership. That's the O in glow. You need to take ownership. Did you let yourself go there? Did you program the other person to treat you that way? Take ownership and go, I can turn this around any moment. Come into the wish in disguise. What do you really want to happen? And then go through conscious communication to the other person and say, hey, you know, this happened in these 2 days. It's making me feel this in this way, and I really would love to have this and need this. So yes, you will, more often than not, certainly once you've gone through my courses, maintain a place of the middle, of balance. But more importantly is not to beat yourself up about the fact that there will be occasions where you will slide into the codependency, where you will lose yourself and then haul yourself back. And I talk a lot about the 5 pillars. First of all, that I notice when I'm sliding, I can tell you that my water intake goes down the toilet, I don't eat well, I don't sleep well, and I don't breathe well, and I don't exercise. As soon as I'm overgiving, those 5 core principles of self-care slide right out the window. Little things like I'll notice that, like I have no clean clothes because I haven't done the washing in a couple of days. Well, why haven't I done the washing in a couple of days? Because I've overgiven into somebody else's situation. So there's kind of like a couple. I always talk about the 5. So there's food, there's water, there's exercise, there's sleep, and there's breath. Those are the 5 things that I notice straight away when they go down the drain. I'm overgiving to another situation. Generally, that's the case. My food is definitely the first one that goes down the toilet. So for me, I'm really lucky in a way because I have really severe IBS, so I have a lot of digestion problems. That means I really can't eat anything. So I can't eat wheat, I can't really eat dairy. I can't just go to the shop and pick up something. But you know what? The benefit of that situation is I constantly have to shop for really clean food. I constantly have to make sure that I cook in advance, that my self-care comes first. Also, in the last year, I've had very severe PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder from the fallout from my divorce. Guess what I've had to do? I've had to say, I'm sorry, I can't come to town and meet you because the noise in the public transport makes me feel overwhelmed. But what are both those things in my life that look like they're really bad things that are stopping my life? What are they stopping me doing? They're stopping me giving up on myself, and they're constantly training for me to put my self-care needs to the forefront. I can't go to town, I can't do this, I can't do that. Will you please come to my house? Do you mind if we eat this and not eat there? I can't eat this, I need this. These things aren't just, the universe doesn't do things by shits and giggles for the fun of it. They're there because I am the poster child for giving up on myself. And that's why all these beautiful things have happened in my life, continually attracting men that are emotionally unavailable to me, continually getting into life situations that break down in order to bring me back to me, injury in sport, jobs not working out, certainly, redundancy, things like that. And then also, constantly my body reminding me that I need to self-care, 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 self-care. So I hope that answers your question. Let me see what other questions there are. Let me refresh this. What are your biggest fears, by the way? What are your biggest fears when it comes to losing yourself in relationships? And how do you notice? How do you notice that you're out of balance, you need to come back to the center? That would really, really interest me. So Emily, you said, I'd like to think I'm leaving codependent state, but I know I've been that my whole life. How do we change this? That's the same thing. I know, Emily, I've been codependent my whole life as well. I think in first line, you really need to cut yourself some slack, because actually codependent will have arisen in your childhood, and in that childhood it was the correct thing to do. So in my childhood, being codependent, being on eggshells, being careful around the situation that I was in was the absolutely perfect survival strategy. So that's what you need to come home to first of all. Your brain isn't malfunctioning, it isn't playing a nasty dirty trick on you. Codependency was exactly what you needed to survive in your childhood. Okay, That's the first thing to keep in mind. The second thing to keep in mind, and actually the light of codependency, is that you are a very, very deeply caring, beautiful, loving person. And I guarantee you that you absolutely love that part of yourself as well, and that you probably wouldn't give it up for anything in the world. So celebrate the light of the codependency. Then look at the shadow. The shadow of codependency is that you give up on yourself and you lose yourself. Well, that is your spiritual journey. That's the journey you and I are on in this lifetime. To learn how to self-care, to learn how to self-soothe, how to manage, how to notice when we're out of fair exchange with people. But the great thing is you will constantly be attracting people and situations that will kind of knock you back into the self. Every time somebody rejects you, it knocks you back. Every time a bully comes into your situation and it knocks you back, you learn more and more and more and more how to notice that point where you really don't feel like your needs are met. And through that, you will learn. Your life is constantly on your side. You will constantly learn when things are not okay with you, and slowly but surely, hopefully also through my videos, you will learn how to get into that state where you can then say, you know what? Something happened last week and I'd really like to talk to you about it, where I felt that because blah, 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 I didn't feel like I was connected or my needs were met, because conscious communication is the final element. Because if you just phone up your best friend and just bitch, he did this and he did that and I can't believe that, and it doesn't go anywhere. Really, you need to take that next step. So yes, codependent, independent. Independent is removing yourself from the situation. That is a vital step. But then stepping back into interdependence, that's the real juice. Can you maintain your boundary while interacting with other people? That's the kind of like thing you want to graduate onto. And Emily just wrote, mine is very like to you, the self-care dips, yoga, doesn't happen, nourishing foods, enough water, taking my... That's what I say, the 5 core pillars of self-care. And you can see, I track them. I track them on a piece of paper every single day. And my number 1 alarm bell is water is the first one, food is the next one, sleep, the state of my house, how up to date I am with my finances, how up to date I am with my washing. It just all goes to when I'm over caring for other people. So yeah, it's about getting to that middle place. But that middle place is often only achieved through new education. We need to practice how to communicate. We need to understand who you really are and what you really need. And you need to really... I did this amazing exercise with a friend of mine 2 days ago. He came to visit and he said, okay, so what are you really looking for in a relationship right now? And I said, well, it's got to be this and it's got to be that, and it can't be this and it can't be that, and it's really got to be this and it's really got to be that. And I'm not talking about some stupid tick list. It's just, I said, I've been through a lot of relationships and I'm now at that point where I'm not really willing to jump into anything very quickly. I just basically want to date someone and I want to see how we interact and whether we're compatible. And I will tell that person straight up that I will probably not sleep with them in the first 3 months. And he said to me, and have you ever said that to anybody who you've dated? And I just went, no. So it's all about practicing, sort of cold practicing with your friends and in the workshops and in the online courses, so that you can then stand in front of the one person and really say, I really like Chinese food, and what do you like? Can we have a compromise here? So it's about gaining new information, really understanding who you are, what your needs are, and then learning how to really communicate with the wish in disguise, not from that place of reaction, from that place of graceful building a new connection. So thank you for that. Yep, that was all the pieces that I had in mind today. So codependent, independent, interdependent. So those are generally the 3 steps. Boundaries, what's not okay with you and what is okay with you, but generally, you'll notice that by getting anxious. So your reactivity will show you when something has gone against your boundaries. The key thing is not to let that crocodile from your reaction rule the roost and then communicate and then bite the head off of the other person. You need to rise into that higher place, and really through breath and self-care and really and practicing going into conscious communication, rising above that, and then communicating with the wish in disguise. That place, that difference between are you careful, you're on eggshells, it's always about what the other person needs, or are you careless? You never care about the other person's needs. Here's the problem. Careful people always attract careless people, because the whole idea is that the careless person needs to be more caring and the careful person needs to, be a bit more boundaried about that whole thing. But the number one thing that this all rests on is attachment theory. What happened to you in your childhood? And it doesn't necessarily need to be great trauma. It's about conditioning. How were you raised? Are you anxiously attached or are you avoidantly attached? Now, there is a place in the middle which is called secure attachment. And a lot of people like to think that they are securely attached. I guarantee you, you're not. You're generally dipping into one or the other. If you've never done some very serious self-work on yourself and are in an awakened, aware state, you'll probably have no chance whatsoever to be in a secure state, unless you had the absolute nirvana of a childhood, which very few of us had. But also, our childhood isn't there to destroy us. It is to awaken in us the journey that we are on to grow ourselves, because the journey of codependency and learning to fall in love with yourself and care for yourself, it's a beautiful journey. It is a beautiful, beautiful journey. It's not better or worse than the journey from careless, the real narcissists, the people that are generally only focused on themselves. But you know what? In first line, I want you to celebrate that actually the journey of codependency is a beautiful journey that starts with that place where you are a really amazingly connected, caring person. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't give up that for absolutely anything in the world. And so my journey, my whole life, will always be to understand what self-love really means, to really have solid habits in the self-care department, and constantly monitor and notice when I'm slipping, and surround myself with the people and the tools that are going to realign me and also keep me accountable to myself. So that is it. That is all I have for today, which was how to not lose yourself in relationships. Thank you so much for being on this call with me. Thank you to all of you that asked me all these awesome questions. Thank you, Emily, so much. I know that we're all in this together. And I think what I want to finish this whole thing off with is you're not alone. And the universe has got your back. You will always be supported. You will always get the right support and guidance as long as you come from a place of being open with yourself and open with in your heart. You will always be guided. You will find exactly the right guidance. And you know what? It's not called I go on a self-development course and then I'm there. It's called, it's a practice, it's a development, it's a journey. It's not something that happens overnight, but it's not supposed to be something that also causes you suffering and pain. It needs to be something that you commit to for the long term and that you work at and tweak at. And most importantly, you have a lot of self-compassion with yourself on the journey, because it's not done overnight and you do need to learn. The most important thing is not to think that, you're in any way flawed for a lifetime. Not at all. You just have never been taught how to truly understand yourself, how to truly love yourself, and then also how to move that into self-care in action. So this is what I'm busy doing at the moment. I'm just building the technical part of the whole system now. So very soon there will be 3 distinct levels of courses. The first will be how to manage your mind and master your emotions. The second will be how to come home to yourself, fall in love with yourself and heal your heart. And the third level is then to take self-care action into every area of your life and really truly master your life and transform yourself into the person you always knew you were meant and bound to be. That is all from me for tonight. Thank you so much for being on this Sunday night self-care session with me. I will see you next Sunday. If you have any question, post them in the comments below, or you can always private message me. I always stay around for about 20 minutes afterwards. I will be in the chat, and also I will be answering your messages if you want to private message me. Thank you so much. I hope you have an awesome rest of the evening. Take care, and lots of love from me to you. Bye bye. See you next time.